So the England team is leaked, apparently, and it's Smith and Farrell in the back line. Farrell at 10 and Marcus Smith at 15. That's what I'm going to talk about on this video. So yeah, leave your comments. As ever, hit like and hit subscribe. I'm Tim, this is Egg Chasers. And I mean, based on the past 4 games, this isn't particularly surprising. Owen Farrell's been suspended for those 4 games, so he needs game time. So he was always going to come back into the team. It was whether he was wearing 10 or 12 was going to be the debating point. Looks like he's going to be wearing 10 if this leak is accurate. And the past 4 games, whilst Farrell's been suspended, Marcus Smith has been experimented with as a 15 coming off the bench and playing some time, as he did against Japan at the weekend, in that 15 shirt. So no huge surprise, to be perfectly honest, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that particular combination. It's also not surprising because Steve Borthwick has done this at Leicester Tigers. Freddie Burns was his backup fly half and played quite a lot of games at 15 for Leicester. The other thought is that George Ford will be on the bench for this one, not given a total rest, but will be on the bench, which opens up the possibility, and this is what I'm really fascinated to know if this might happen, could at some point in the game, George Ford come on at 10, Owen Farrell be moved to 12, and Marcus Smith be at 15. So you have Ford, Farrell and Smith on the field at the same time. It's not quite South Africa in their 4-9s, but it's not far off, is it? What do you make of this in general? What do you think about that combination? Just while you're thinking about that and getting your comments in. So again, this is a leak article in the Times. Don't know how accurate it is. I suspect it probably is accurate. Last week's was pretty much on the money. I think maybe there was one, the leaked team was pretty much on the money, maybe except for one of the back row players. I think Lewis Ludlam, maybe. But other than that, it was absolutely on the money. This is why, by the way, South Africa named their team on a Tuesday, because exactly this happens. And I was reminded in the video I did yesterday about South Africa's team and their 7-1 split. I was reminded in the comments that it was during the British and Irish Lions tour to South Africa a couple of years ago that the team kept getting leaked, and consequently they started naming the team early, and that's why that's happened. And players get told at the start of a week whether they're going to be playing or not. So these leaks are likely to happen. Players want to tell family to come over for a game, should they bother travelling, all the rest of it. Who knows where it's coming from. I'd love maybe a head coach to play a little trick where they tell lots of different people lots of slightly different lineups, and then when the one pops up in the press, you kind of know who's leaked it. But it must be frustrating for the head coaches. But there you go. South Africa have dealt with that by just not allowing the leak to come out, just naming the team really early. So the rest of the team, apparently it will be a back line of Danny Care at 9, Owen Farrell at 10, with Ollie Lawrence at 12, Elliot Daly at 13, which is another unused combination so far, and the wingers being Henry Arundell and Max Malins. So it's everyone that hasn't played is being given a go. And in the pack, a front row of Bevan Rodd, Theo Dan, Carl Sinckler. Jack Walker would be the third hooker that would be on the bench. George Martin and Dave Ribbans at lock. Lewis Ludlam, Jack Willis, who hasn't played yet, and Billy Vunipola being the back row. So this looks like rotation, and Chile's the perfect team to do that against, and also testing new combinations. And you could argue whether it's a good idea to experiment at this stage and whether that experimentation should have been done before the World Cup. But I'm okay with it. Yeah, so if George Ford comes on, he can only really play 10, George Ford. Would you take Smith off and then possibly put Daly or Malins to 15? Or what would you do? I don't exactly know. I will just say, whilst Marcus Smith actually looked quite lively against Japan in the 15 jersey, looked like there was a little something there. It does have me scratching my head a little bit why Max Malins or Elliot Daly aren't used in that position, being as they've played a lot of club rugby in that position. In fact, they've played international rugby in that position, and they both play with Owen Farrell. But I get it. I get if you're trying to just engineer ways to get your best players on the field to do a particular role, then that's great. And I think there's a lot more of this. And like I say, I think this is going to be the story of rugby for the next 4 years. and South Africa have been pioneering it, but fluidity in the way that you play, the number on your back, not necessarily dictating exactly what you do, and more than one way to skin a cat. And, you know, I'm all for that kind of experimentation and flexibility. It does feel to me like the team that went out there and played against Japan, and the style of rugby that they played against Japan, now I reflect on it a couple of days afterwards, that was going out there basically practicing for a quarter-final or a semi-final if England get there, against top level opposition, that it felt like Japan was practicing exactly how they're going to play. Low risk, lots of kicking, applying lots of pressure, trying to squeeze mistakes, scoreboard pressure 3-6-9, and taking your opportunities when they're there. This feels like a little bit more of an experiment. I mentioned that Steve Borthwick plays with had played at club level. Quite often he would either have Freddie Stewart as his fullback at Leicester, or he would go for another fly half and they would play a slightly different way. That is how Saracens play as well. And I do think it's important to point out that as far as I'm concerned, you have to have two, I call them playmakers, two ball players on the field. I think that is the modern way. That is the way rugby is played right now. Look at South Africa. They have Damien Willemse or Willy Leroux at fullback, both who come in at first receiver quite a lot. France have Thomas Ramos, who does that job. New Zealand have Beauden Barrett. Ireland, well, they kind of do it in a slightly different way. Hugo Keenan can do that role, but they also have Mac Hansen, who can step in as a kind of playmaking option as well. And Robbie Henshaw is a real good ball player as well. Scotland have Blair Kinghorn. I do think, and we've as England fans, it's been frustrating to see England's attack being so blunt. I do think that is how you achieve that. And when you look at the way that club rugby in England is played, the way that the players operate week in, week out, and a lot of them play with the second playmaker at 15. And Owen Farrell has that option at Saracens. And it works really, really well. It works well for other nations. Also, I think there is enough evidence in the book, and this is quite an unpopular opinion, which I don't really understand. Ford at 10, Farrell at 12. The two playmakers playing at 10 and 12 got us to a World Cup final. It was some of the best, in fact, some of the best attacking rugby England have played since 2003 was when you had George Ford at 10, Owen Farrell at 12, and Elliot Daly at 15. 3 ball playing, big picture playmaking options. That's when England have played the best rugby. So I'm not totally against it. I don't know why people have an issue with Ford and Farrell 10-12. The Smith-Farrell 10-12 option, that was tried and it didn't work. It just didn't work. So I'm all for the fact that Steve Borthwick is not trying to put Smith and Farrell in the same team at 10 and 12. He's trying something different, 10 and 15. Why not? I don't see any reason why it can't work. You know how I feel about Owen Farrell if you've watched the channel for any length of time. I think he gets completely unnecessary stick. I think he's an exceptional rugby player. I think we're lucky to have him, and I think that a lot of the people that complain about Owen Farrell now, when he retires, will recognise what an incredible rugby player he has been for England and is still right now. And you only have to look at the way that his teammates in England, the way his opponents from around the world, coaches, referees, the way that people talk about him to know that we're very, very lucky to have him. So I'm delighted that he's back in the team, getting some game time. That's not to say he will definitely start against Samoa or against whoever England play in the quarter-final, assuming they get there. Be a serious mess up if England don't get there at this stage. But I'm okay with it, and I would be okay with a potential playmaker at 15 as an option. I think when it comes to the big games, you're going to play Freddie Stewart there, and therefore, if you want that second playmaker, you've got to look at potentially that appearing somewhere else in the team. And 12 is the obvious place to think about it. I don't think you can have it both ways. I don't think you can complain about England's style of play, kicking it all the time, and then expect England to do too much more when Tuolangi is at 12, let's say, for example. And I think it's definitely something we should consider and look at, even so that we know in games, in the last 20 minutes of games, we can flip the script and change it up and I'm all for it. I'm excited about it. Again, this is a leak. Don't know if it's true. Let's wait and find out if it is. We'll find out tomorrow. I think the team is announced at 4:30 p.m. UK time, 5:30 p.m. where I am in France, and I will have another video shortly after that. I'll see you on the next one. Hit subscribe, like, and leave your comments.